Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's event. My name is Renee Stacy. I am the Vice President of Marketing here at Sectra. I'm very pleased to be serving as your host today. Sectra is a very proud partner and supporter of SIM. We've done so for a very long time. And today, of course, we're also very proud to be sponsoring the 2023 SIM webinar series. Especially pleased this month is a topic that we are very pleased to be bringing to you: charting clinical innovation, empowering long-term success through cloud technology in and beyond the hospital system. To start us going, I would like to offer a very warm welcome to our speakers. Leading this conversation, Dr. Daniel Navarro. He is the Chief of Imaging Informatics at a very large multi-region health system here in the United States. Joining him is President of Sectra North America, Isaac Zaworski, and alongside him, John Doyle, Global Chief Technology Officer for the Healthcare and Life Sciences business at Microsoft. Welcome, Daniel. Can you hear us? Dr. Navarro?
Hello.
Hi there. We're ready for you.
Okay, well, hello, everybody. I'm Daniel Navarro, as Renee just told you. I'm a nuclear radiologist and also a medical imaging informaticist. I've been working in the field for a long time. I've been an on and off member of SIM. I actually was a member of SCAR before it became SIM. I was at the meeting where SIM was birthed, so to speak. So it's a pleasure to be here. We have a very interesting story to share with you today, so I'll look forward to doing that for you. Could I have the next slide, please? So our story begins back at the turn of the millennium, essentially. Around the year 2000, we realized that there were multiple mini PACS systems out there. We had Aegis, we had Pixel Links, a Canon token ring PACS, so they were mushrooming all over the place. We had lots of media formats, and DICOM was in fact maturing at that time as a standard. So we came up with the idea of a DICOM dial tone. We looked around, and really there were PACS systems out there, but there wasn't really a DICOM dial tone, what later on went to, we called a medical image archive, and became in the industry called a vendor neutral archive. So we looked around, and there were really two companies. One was Terramedica, which is a spin-off of the Mayo Clinic, and then there was a startup out of Birmingham, Alabama, called Imagine. And we chose Imagine at the time. We actually made an investment in them, and we went forward. Can we have the next slide, please? So our go live, and you probably wonder how I remember that, it was September 10th, 2001. Those of you who don't know why I remember that so well, well, you weren't around then. We came up with a medical image archive. It covered California, as the little diagram there shows. It had a complex architecture where, you know, we had a data center that hosted the archive. We had points of presence at all the facilities, which we called FIX. We called them FIX, which really stood for Facility Image Cache. The original application was written in Linux. At that time, Linux was not well regarded. So our IT partners insisted that we port it to Sun Solaris, and we go to Oracle, which created all sorts of issues for our vendor. But that was a long time ago. At that time, we had very little in the way of modality work list. So a lot of the data that first went into the archive has questionable demographics, and it's an issue that we're going to have to deal with. And one of the things that we realized pretty soon after we went live is that we had gone from a world of PACS, Picture Archival Communication System, to what I started calling a PCCS, which we went to a Picture Cache Communication System, which was dependent on the archive for the archive. The archive served well offline storage, but it was not well designed for operations. Next slide. So we took our lessons. and we moved on from a medical image archive to what we call the enterprise medical image archive. And at that time, this was a significant improvement. We changed vendors, we rethought our architecture, and this one it really covered the entire enterprise, and we had a wide area network and a PACS and archive. Connecting it was improving. We also realized that with this offline support of the archive, we were going to have to beef up our PACS systems, and we poured money into making sure that the PACS had much more local storage, because we realized we had initially architected them for 3 months. That wasn't that didn't work clinically. So we gave them 2 years of storage, and some places even more. Some very clever people, some of them may be on here, came up with PROPS, which stood for prospective retrieval of prior studies. So we went from the RIS, we would figure out who's coming, and we would move those studies to the PACS. This was an effort to make sure that when we were busy, we didn't essentially completely swamp out the requests of the archive and even of our PACS system processing the incoming studies. We also came up with something called the DICOM sweeper, which ran every night. And we made sure that all the studies that we had in the PACS had in fact been replicated in the archive to make absolutely certain that we had that the data integrity was kept there. The overall system was better, but it required a lot of effort because you can see all these processes that we had added, and downtime was a major issue for us. So that went live about 2010. And if you go next, and then today our current reality is that we have 2 copies of the EMIA. Over 50 PACS studies, over 50 PACS systems are out there. We have 230 million studies that we have archived. We've taken various business continuity approaches, and then we also have almost 6 petabytes, I'm sorry, of archive storage in 2 data centers. So about 12 petabytes of storage because we have a copy each. If I can go to the next one. This is really not sustainable. So it was a high cost to keep images in multiple systems, required high-end storage hardware. So we had symmetric storage RAIDs, quite expensive. And we were doing that in order to improve the performance of the system. And then we realized that we hit the wall when digital pathology forced the issue. And the fascinating thing about this is that digital pathology was sort of like smoldering in the background until COVID. And COVID completely changed the game. It changed the game for radiology. All our radiologists went home. And it certainly changed the game for the pathologists, because suddenly we were going to have them read from home. So with COVID really pushing us forward, it really accelerated our decision-making process. And we realized that we were going to have to take a fresh look and try to understand how to go forward. If I can have the next, please. So we have been talking about this for quite a while. Certainly all our PACS vendors are talking about the cloud. So our cloud vendors have dramatically matured. There's no question that AWS, Google, and Azure are not on the first run around the barn. They're really very mature and are now trusted. Because one of the issues that we had was that there was this tremendous fear internally that if we put our data outside our firewalls, we would be at a tremendous risk. The reality is that I think today it is safer to put it in this much more carefully managed environments than what we can do internally, in spite of the fact that we really go all out with our infrastructure, particularly our cybersecurity. So that forced the issue. Networks are much faster today than they were. These dedicated express lanes that we can have from the cloud to our system, and plus our wide area network is dramatically improved, so that we can start thinking about, instead of having local storage, have it in a central place in the cloud, and be able to move it quickly. Software as a service offers a compelling solution for a risk-averse industry. We're going to pay as we go. Storage as a service is really, we got to head there. So that both of those provided a compelling solution. And then the pack vendors are, by and large, ready to move in this direction. They were talking to us about it. The other piece that we're going to have to adapt, and that is that we've lived in a world where PAX has always been a capital expense. Now we're going to go into something that is really an operational expense. So both our vendors and us are going to need to adjust. We need to adjust to how we pay, and the vendors are going to have to adjust to how they recognize revenue, because it's going to be stretched out longer than we had initially imagined. If I can have the next slide, please. So as an organization, we chose Sectra as our vendor of choice. There are a number of potential solutions that I'm not here in any way to tell you that this is the only solution. It is the solution that worked for us. And we're actively moving forward with this. Our first stop is really going to be digital pathology, as I alluded to earlier. And we will be going live with digital pathology early this coming year. We're hoping that by Q2 we're running. And it's a pilot that will be run out of Northern California, and eventually this will spread to all our regions. Next is radiology, and this is a beast. This is a gigantic project. 8 regions, a lot of devices, a lot to be done, and we're hoping to be done by 2025. We're also actively looking at cardiology as to how where they will fit, because the goal here is a pixel EMR. We're going to have all the pixels here. How you render them will vary, but all pixels will be in this one place. iCare PACS, which we deployed a few years back, and this is how we actually first did a project with Sectra, is currently on client-server architecture. We have a single instance that covers the entire country, and that will move to the cloud when hardware replacement is necessary. That's probably somewhere after radiology and before cardiology, but we'll see where it falls. And then single platform for all imaging and a very tight integration to Epic. That's, to us, the key to the pixel EMR. And I'll share a little story with you. When we were deploying our RIS system, Radiant from Epic, I had the chance to talk to the Radiant team, and they said to me, "Hey, listen, there's this company over here that you really need to meet." And they introduced me to Frederick Gustafsson, the CTO of Sectra. They were very impressed with the work that they were doing with Firecast. That was 5 years ago. Knock, knock, Gustav, it's time. I should say, Frederick, it's time. But that was really the why, and one of the compelling reasons why we went in this direction. We're convinced, I've made the point that the EMR is the operating system. So our organization runs on the EMR, and everything needs to be anchored to the EMR, particularly our imaging system. And that's where the pixel EMR concept comes, and particularly the tight integration into Epic. If I can have the next slide, please. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, Renee. Thank you.
Thank you. Pardon me. So this is a part of our session. We actually have 3 polls that we're going to be pushing out to all of our audience today. Our first poll, and this actually is a bit of an afterlead to some polls that we've been doing with our customers over the last 6 months with relates to transition to cloud. So I would love to understand how it might be similar to what we're kind of hearing already. Where are you in the transition to cloud? Are you currently in the process of a migration similar to Dr. Navarro? Have you already completed the transition to cloud? Where are you sitting today? Or are you not currently planning to transition to the cloud? So we would appreciate your inputs. I believe Anna from SIM has pushed up that poll. We'll just take a couple of minutes if that's okay. not a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds. Would love to get your insight. And thank you, Dr. Navarro, for the explanation of the Pixel EMR. I know I had a couple of people in the chat asking if you could actually define what that actually meant. So. Okay. Do we have any results? Excellent. Dr. Navarro, can you see those results?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Excellent.
This is wonderful. So you're either a good number currently in the process of migrating to the cloud, 41%, 11% already completed the transition. So that means that we're at 52%. Wonderful. We've exceeded 50%, and then 48% not currently planning to transition to the cloud.
Okay, we will start the conversation.
All right, that's great. So I am delighted to have Isaac Zaworski and John Doyle here with me. We've met a number of times, and it's a great pleasure to work with them. I'll start with you, John. From the perspective of cost, performance, and cybersecurity, how has Azure matured to the point where you can now be trusted with what are literally petabytes of invaluable patient information?
And firstly, thank you, Dr. Navarro, for the kind invitation. So firstly, I think you covered the points really early on, very sort of clearly that, early on, customers were concerned about performance, they were concerned about cost, they were concerned about complexity, and obviously you also mentioned the need to scale. And so as we think about cloud maturity, Microsoft itself has focused really heavily on three core areas, really. The first is around cost. How can we make it more cost efficient to move to the cloud? How can we ensure that the performance is either matching what you have today or better, preferably better? And then how can we ensure that you actually can operate in a resilient manner while doing so in a cost efficient approach? So we've focused really heavily on making the cloud more cost effective for large industry workloads like medical imaging. The second area, really, and this kind of addresses part of the challenge around risk, is ensuring that we can help you to meet and exceed your security, privacy, and compliance obligations. So not only making sure that we're building good technology to help you protect against cybersecurity threats, but actually exposing the controls so that you can meet your security, privacy, and compliance obligations in a way that enables you to be confident to move your workloads to the cloud. And then really the third area, and I think this is also an area driving customers to the cloud, is access to innovation. I'm sure we've all heard over the last sort of 6 to 9 months this new wave of technology called generative AI, and we're seeing more and more customers actually want to get on board to see if they can actually improve things like clinical, operational, administrative, and even IT workflows to make the systems better and more accessible. And I think one of the areas that Microsoft is heavily investing in is making that really easy for everybody to adopt. So if you are able to move to the cloud securely in a cost-efficient manner, you're now able to access that more modern innovation. And those three things combined, we're seeing as a sort of common thread for those customers that are moving to the cloud. The other sort of question, I think the poll did a great job of articulating this. The camp is kind of 50-50. 50% of customers are in the transition, and 50% of the customers are either not planning or have concerns or risks that they need to address. And I think calls like the call we're having today actually help to uncover some of the challenges that Dr. Navarro, your health system has sort of uncovered and how you're addressing those challenges. I think the more we can provide that information more freely available for others to learn for the value of moving to the cloud. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit later in the conversation.
Wonderful. Isaac, I was going to ask you from a vendor perspective, what advantages does the cloud deployment hold for Sectra?
First off as well, thank you, Dr. Navarro, for letting me share in the conversation. I think the story that you presented thus far does a good job of laying out the context around the advantages, not just for us on the vendor side of things, but also on the customer side, and the fact that those advantages are very complementary on both sides. So for us here at Sectra, I mean, we're a very well-established vendor in the marketplace. Coming from the European market, we've been in and around the PACS market for decades, and we have the benefit of having a perspective that is shaped by requirements coming not just from the market here in the United States, but also from Scandinavia, Greater Europe, across the board. And so we get to see the kind of the benefits of strategic decisions play out on different timescales. So for us here, this is where we get to look back and say that we've been working in the cloud domain on behalf of our customers for many years at this point in time. Some of our European customers were early out in the desire to offload their on-premise IT responsibilities, and recognizing that from an organizational perspective, it makes a lot of sense to allow each party to focus on what they are most good at, right? And I think recognizing the fact that we are the ones who design and build the systems themselves, we also have a really good handle on the architectural requirements that can enable those systems to operate at their greatest efficiency and effectiveness. So from a strategic standpoint, we early on and have continued to kind of to anchor ourselves in this decision. We early on recognized that it is extraordinarily valuable for us to be able to ensure that our systems are operating on infrastructure that is not only built and scaled, but maintained in such a way that it will provide the most stable, consistent, and secure operation of our software, but also enable the ability for customers to meet their business requirements. So as you highlighted earlier, we see across the board that there's a big shift and a pressure on capital budgets. Part of this comes from the fact that that the market is recognizing that a shift into an operational model is not only an option, but it is an option that is increasingly available across their portfolio. And that means that you're shifting costs closer to where the value is generated from an organization. And I think that ends up being good for everyone. It makes sure that our incentives are aligned across all of the parties in a transaction. And I think for me, looking at our business, it's been really interesting to see how much more aggressive the uptake from a customer perspective has been in this transition into a cloud solution, and even more than that, into a true software as a service solution. I think with each year that goes by, we survey our customer base and the market more broadly and up our expectations for the adoption or how quickly people are going to transition, to a point now where we're very much tactically focused on when all of our business will be software as a service, and when our entire install base will have transitioned over, because we can see it not too far out. And I think we hosted a lot of our customers for user group meeting a couple of weeks ago, and that message was kind of heard loud and clear through the audience there, that what used to be a question of whether if we're going to move to the cloud or not has really transitioned into a question of when, which is really encouraging to hear.
John, I was going to follow up on Isaac's comments there, because to me the thing that amazes me is how quickly this transition took place. Because I mean, when we deployed our first instance of Sectra, which was our iCare PACS system, it wasn't even a question that we would put it in the cloud. It was going to be a server sitting at our data center. It took forever because data centers are complicated places, a lot of rules, and it took a long time. What I was hoping you could comment on is that our IT side of the house has become progressively more comfortable that they want to get out of the data center business and let professionals such as Microsoft, Azure, Google, others, IBM, to do that. And we'll just simply leverage that rather than us building our own walled gardens. Can you comment on that technology transition or the perception and acceptance that that renting your hardware is the way to go forward and not to try to have it under your roof?
No, and it's a really important question, and I think you're right. And if I even reflect on your comments around the sort of pandemic, sort of transitioning people's mindset to having to work differently, and I think for us, certainly as a cloud provider, we saw that as an accelerant for customers trusting cloud providers to actually deliver those services. The other thing that we certainly see from an IT perspective is the complexity of running these systems and keeping them highly available and keeping them protected and secure has just got that much harder. You know, we're seeing more and more frequent and more sophisticated cybersecurity threats, which are actually keeping, you know, IT teams up at night. And if they can actually offload some of that challenge to a cloud provider that is best skilled at, you know, delivering and sort of responding to these high impact events on a more rapid basis. And the other thing that we're also starting to see is that IT are leaning more into the business. How can they be a business partner? How can they enable the business? And that means effectively, you know, handing off some of those sort of what I would call infrastructure and security tasks to cloud providers. And I think the cloud providers all up have done a really great job of sort of building that trust by continuing to sort of drive the agenda around security and compliance, certainly within regulated industry. So at a high level, for me, it's complexity and risk avoidance, but also a desire for IT to actually be a better partner to the business, to enable care teams to operate, you know, at the top of their licenses. And we're starting to see the same on the IT side as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. Renee, should we run another poll and see what
Absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, poll number 2. So, and again, this Isaac had mentioned to it. We had our user event a couple of weeks ago, and these were some of the conversations that we were having among our attendees. So, what specific challenges are you aiming to address by adopting cloud technology? So the first is around data accessibility and sharing amongst other healthcare providers. Optimizing cost efficiency and the scalability of IT infrastructure, just like you and John were just discussing, and improving data security and compliance with health regulations. So the interesting thing I think about this poll is you might actually have something else that you might be looking at in terms of challenges to solve. So we would love to hear about those as well in the chat, if you would like to put that in as well. But here are our 3 choices that we would love to get your input on. Excellent.
And if any of you have different things you want to include in there, just put them in the chat and we'll take them up.
Yes, we would love that. I know that part of the conversation you and I have had, Dr. Navarro, is the IT infrastructure was really a big lever for your organization, especially like you said, with digital pathology coming into play. Okay, results are here.
Okay, so the results are in. The 63%, so 2/3, are optimizing cost efficiency and scalability of IT infrastructure. I couldn't agree more with that. That's really a critical piece. Of course, enhancing data accessibility goes hand in hand. If you optimize the scalability of your IT infrastructure, you just enhance your data accessibility and improving data security. And you know, that comes in only 8%, but boy, I'll tell you, it loomed very large in our thinking. That I mean, cybersecurity is the real deal. I mean, it's not if you're going to be victimized by a ransomware or some cybersecurity issue, it's when. So to get in front of this is a critical piece on that. I wonder if Isaac, you'd like to comment on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Dr. Navarro, you you certainly know, but Sectra, our name, actually goes back to secure transmission. So security has been at the heart of our organizational thinking since day one. We actually have a separate business unit that does secure communications for governments around the world. And so for us as an organization, security by design and the recognition of the kind of broader threat environment as it correlates to not only our products, but our customers has been key to our business. And I think for us, as we look at this journey, and as we have looked at developing, establishing, and kind of strengthening our partnerships moving forward, both with technology partners, but with our customers, security is one of the biggest threads that is incorporated into that thinking. So, for example, our relationship with Microsoft is heavily anchored in the fact that we've assessed that Microsoft has kind of a similar approach to and level of focus on investment in and thinking about security from the ground up in all of the services that they offer. To your comment, Dr. Navarro, the reality is that it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And I think being prepared in every way that you can, from the code level for us as we think about our DevOps pipeline and the products that we're actually generating, but then increasingly into the tight coupling with the infrastructure layer and the tooling that exists inside of that infrastructure layer underneath that Microsoft is able to make available to us. We're able to be much more proactive and aggressive in our stance to cybersecurity, looking outwards. And ultimately, we feel very confident that that ends up being a better value proposition for our customers. Again, it gets back to the focusing on what you do best. And in a world where Microsoft can invest orders of magnitude more money on the comprehensive and scaled cybersecurity initiatives internally, and where you have a vendor like us for whom security is kind of in our DNA from the ground up in the products that we develop, that ends up being a level of focus that most healthcare organizations just can't apply on their own. And it's made even worse by the fact that being able to find and hire talent in today's world is challenging, particularly when you're competing with the likes of Microsoft and us for the same sorts of folks. So really, again, making sure that the offering we're putting forward allows us to focus on the things that we're best at, and really creating the partnerships that keep those incentives aligned.
John, would you like to add any comments to that?
I'd like to pick up on the last comment that Isaac made, allowing organizations to focus on what they do best. As a healthcare organization, your primary focus is on patient care, and therefore you're not designed to be the best at security or IT delivery. Microsoft is a technology company. We invest heavily to be the best at security, the best at providing cloud infrastructure and scale. And therefore, the partnership between Microsoft Sectra and your organization is really us focusing on the areas that we operate at our best. And I think that's a really important point. And the point that you made, Dr. Navarro, around, the increasing frequency and sophistication of threats. In a recent survey, we saw 1 in 3 healthcare organizations have been impacted by a cybersecurity threat. And, how do we help to recover that? How do we actually become more proactive by making security more simplistic? Because it's a complex area, but partnering with a technology company, partnering with an industry vendor like Sectra, I think the better together of the partnership enables us to actually excel and actually enables us and you to sort of accelerate your ability to deliver on the things that you're trying to solve for. So that would kind of be my sort of perspective.
Yeah, the comment that I would make is like cybersecurity has really become a real threat, and some organizations a near existential threat, given how severe the attacks can be and how long and protracted the resolution ends up being. So the reality is that that's not why we went this direction, but it was certainly a very compelling contributing factor. When I think back of what are the problems that we're going to solve, and they're really a lot more mundane. It's like, how about hierarchical storage, so that the cloud can let you have flash drives to glacier storage that will you'll get it tomorrow. So that the possibility of having a single point of contact where all the images are retrievable, hierarchically stored, are really invaluable pieces, to say nothing of speed to market, because we're talking being done in 2025 with our radiology deployment. Mm-hmm. That would not happen if we were going to do classical client server architecture. Now, there are things that our vendor is going to do also, like make it simpler to deploy, so that current systems require fat clients on desktops, maybe some added hardware on our browsers, software in our browsers. So there's a tremendous advantage operationally. So I don't want to minimize how important that part is. As important as cybersecurity is, that operational piece. I mean, I'm talking about simple things like patching, of software upgrades. I mean, for us to do a software upgrade is a real production. It takes months. Each server has to be touched. You take them down. You move to your business continuity system, and go on. So operationally, there are really some invaluable contributions to us from what the cloud gives us that we currently do not have. I mean, a cloud is no magic. It's a bunch of hardware in data centers, except it's been completely optimized to meet our needs. So instead of us having that hardware sitting on our data centers, it's now sitting at a place where it's being professionally cared for and optimized. So thank you for that, John. That Microsoft has done a wonderful job for us in that direction. Renee, how about one more poll?
Yeah, and actually, before I do that, Dr. Navarro, if you would allow me, a question did just come in that I think could actually be very relevant to this conversation that you're having now. Let me just, I'll paraphrase. So we looked at cloud and found that it would have a significant effect on system architecture. We have different vendors for PACS, VNA, dictation, AI, et cetera. We found that if we were not careful with our cloud implementation, we could end up with higher costs due to the data charges passing between the systems. So the question is, will cloud implementations, do you believe cloud implementations are going to force moving to single vendor IT solutions? And I think that plays to your idea of how we're simplifying our environments.
Yeah. That's a tough question to really answer. It was a decision that we made based on a long experience of trying to do the best of breed, and it's a very seductive idea that in reality is very difficult to accomplish. I mean, when we started, and I shared the journey with you, with the group here, we thought we had the best of a breed of an archive, and we had the best of breed of PACS. That didn't mean that they two together were the best of breed, because they're not aligned in their incentives and goals. So there will be a role for that, but I think to some extent we are going to need some significant chunk of the infrastructure that is integrated. And as I referred back to us, it's not just the images, it's the integration to our EMR. How we go forward with the other things that you mentioned, such as what do we do about AI? Where does it play? Do we use the marketplace? How are we going to do that? and other vendors, because we do have other solutions that are going to need to be included. I think that's yet to be sorted out. But our decision was really more to take the big stuff and unify that, so that we got out of the game of playing handmade between one vendor and another vendor, because that's not a useful place for us. That's actually wasteful and actually frustrating to
If I'm,
us. Go ahead. Whoever wants to comment, go ahead.
yeah, if I may. So I think, and Dr. Navarro, I think you would agree with me when I say this, but given that this is an imaging informatics group, I think I would hope that everybody on the call can agree that the future is going to require data from all different sources to be able to play together nicely. So inevitably, we will need to see the silos of different disciplines and imaging modalities broken down, so that, for example, in oncology care, we can have efficient and effective sharing of information between radiologists and pathologists, have tumor boards that don't require a boatload of people physically getting into a room in order to compare data from different systems on a whiteboard or something like that, right? That reality is already here, and it's just going to be amplified as we move forward. And so I think, Dr. Navarro, I really appreciate your choice of words up front, because it comes down to integration for me. I'm a data guy, and the reality is that the ability to integrate data from all these different sources in a normalized and correlated way is the critical requirement. Whether or not that happens through one vendor or multiple vendors is a practical and thoughtful decision. To the point of the question, it does require careful consideration and a good plan for what you want to accomplish. And I think from our perspective in the marketplace today, while the vision of a best of breed environment with standard data interfaces that enable lots of different platforms to talk and operate together efficiently plays nicely on paper, it's really difficult to realize in the real world. The data interfaces that we have are continuing to evolve, but they're not there yet. The compliance with them is challenging in different places. And so that's where I think a lot of the customers that we work with have been down this road in one path or another, and have come to realize that there are some places where you need to have tighter coupling and tighter interfaces that in order to accomplish the objective that you want from kind of an enterprise perspective. And that's even before we get to the conversation about AI, which I think will change a lot of these things.
Yeah, and I'd probably add a couple of comments. So I think one of the things that we're trying to do as Microsoft is make sure, as we go through this learning journey with our customers and our partners, we actually expose those learnings so others can take advantage of them. So as you think about, performance for networking, compute, and storage, how you apply security appropriately, how you meet your compliance obligations, we need to make sure that we're collectively learning. One of our roles as Microsoft is to connect and activate the ecosystem for the benefit of our customers, and therefore, making sure that we're aligning to industry standards, making sure that we're actually helping with the integration and interoperability of data. Because Isaac, as you mentioned, the concept of multimodal data is here, and the value of multimodal data to improve patient experience, include clinician and nurse experience, is valuable. And we need to make sure that we're doing that in a consistent way. So I think some of the learnings that we're having is, as customers, as partners transition to the cloud, we're exposing those learnings through a set of references. So we have something called the Azure Well-Architected Framework. It's a framework that many of our partners use to build in the cloud. It's a framework that many of our partners use as they start to think about migrating workloads to the cloud. And those frameworks are actually built based on our experience of working with customers in heavy regulated industry where we're working with life critical systems. So again, my sort of guidance to the people on this call is actually that a lot of the information is available, and we collectively need to do a better job of sharing that across the community for the collective benefit of everyone, because ultimately healthcare is a societal challenge, and I think we should all lean in together to try and solve for it.
Yeah, well said, John. Renee,
Yes.
we're going to be
We have
running
10
short on
minutes.
time. Any times? Should we take some of the questions from
Yeah, I
the
think so.
audience?
We do have
Yeah,
a third poll, and of
Yeah.
course, if we have time at the end, we can
Sure.
certainly go
Yeah.
back to it. But let me go through some of the questions that I've got here. Again, I'm going to paraphrase. So this, I think, is for you, Dr. Navarro. What metrics are you collecting in your current PACS system to compare and contrast to make sure your new cloud initiative is going to be a success?
Yeah, we got data coming out of our ears. It's all performance data. How uptime, the latency of the systems. So we have data on our server architecture. We have data, of course, on our deployment down to the workstations, and a variety of pieces on latency, because that has proven to be one of the big concerns that everybody has. The radiologists are so pressed these days that they just simply are intolerant of any latency. And latency is anything longer than a second. That's latency. So to answer the question, I'm not going to get into the specifics because it's a laundry list, but we have extensive lists. So for example, one of the ones that we'll look at almost immediately is what's the change in downtime? I mean, downtime has bedeviled us. So can we get less downtime? Upgrades have been painful. Can we decrease the length of time for when upgrades happen? So on and on. We'll absolutely be benchmarking. Kaiser Permanente is a data-driven organization, so we will make every effort to understand the data that we currently have and compare it to the data that we're going to get as we go forward.
Excellent. This second one, I think, is probably for yourself, Isaac. Of course, we have many organizations similar to Kaiser Permanente who are taking this path with Sectra. What the question is, what is Sectra doing or changing or developing to be able to serve all of its customers in a similar way?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, again, I mentioned this earlier, but Sectra is an organization that's well established, has been around for a long time, and we've been through several major transitions in the industry. And I think strategically and from an internal perspective, we recognize that this transition away from the traditional enterprise software model into becoming a service provider to our customers is one of the larger transitions, if not the largest, that we've ever been through. So on that front, we also recognizing that our customers have always and will always come first. Customer satisfaction is what drives us as an organization. Have really put a lot of thought and initiative into shaping an organization internally that is calibrated to bring the service offering to our customers in both an efficient way, but also in a very scalable way. So what that means is that we are looking at the opportunities that we get by being able to standardize the infrastructure that our software is being deployed on. We get to invest in technology solutions to be able to get to a point where we're minimizing downtime for upgrades for our customers, and also being able to offer upgrades on a kind of much smaller but much more frequent basis. If there's one thing that frustrates our engineers and developers in today's world, it's the fact that as we spend so much time reaching out to our customers, listening for their feedback on what we can improve, what we can add, how we can do better. It can take 6 months for that feedback to end up into a release cycle, and then another 12 to 18 months before it ends up getting through an upgrade cycle with the customer, as we balance all the equities at play in a traditional IT environment with the resource requirements on both sides. And so as we have kind of aligned our organization internally to focus on the customer journey as a whole, where it's not a question of getting to go live and then shifting our model and our focus into a support focus, where we have a typical transition from deployment into support. In our new mindset, the customer journey and the continuity of that customer journey is the most important thing. So being able to transition a customer into the service offering, and then to be able to stand hip to hip with them as we move forward together to further refine the offering, respond to them on a much faster cadence, and have that continuity of relationship that we get by having kind of dedicated resources who live with you through the journey, even up to the point where maybe you want to offboard from Sectra in that environment. I think there's another question in the chat which I thought was really good. We're probably, in my experience, relatively unique in that we talk internally about what it means to have a smooth customer journey, even if it does mean transitioning a customer elsewhere, if it makes sense for them or for us. And I think to that point, that just goes to the fact that we really value our customers, and at the end of the day, we want the best for them. And we firmly believe that our offerings really provide that capability to them. But at the end of the day, it's doing the right thing for the patients, right? And so the shift into this service operations model really, again, allows us to focus on what we're best at, allows us to align all of our resources throughout that customer journey to make sure that we're providing the best capabilities to our customers to support patients as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Thank you. So we have a digital pathology question here. So digital pathology image size is a constraint for long-term storage. Of course, the practice in radiology of using comparative priors doesn't really exist as yet. What do we recommend for long-term storage strategies for digital pathology images? And this could be a Dr. Navarro, or all three might be able to have a perspective from a vendor and a user perspective. Oh, you're on mute, Dr. Navarro.
I'll take a crack at that one for a little bit. We don't know. Pathology is a very different beast. For one thing, you don't download to your workstation nearly as much data as you upload. So there's an asymmetry that is taking place. So that's one factor. The other one is that we're not necessarily going to be comparing today's biopsy to something in the past. Most of the time, it'll be something new or the surgical specimen. So we don't quite understand how much comparison will be necessary. So we definitely will apply some hierarchical storage early on, if for no other reason, it would be cost prohibitive to do otherwise. So we don't know, do we keep 6 months spinning and the rest in glacier storage? Do we keep a year? We'll have to work with our pathologist. We're not going to delete it because we think there's immense value in the digital data, but it will definitely be put on higher latency media.
So, oh, apologies.
I was
Go
just going to
ahead.
add one moment of color there. I think this is one place where, we can benefit from the demands of many other commercial markets as well. Microsoft is developing some wonderful technology along with a lot of the other vendors out there that are looking at how do you store many petabytes, if not far more than that, data for long-term in a cost-efficient way. And whether that technology exists today, tomorrow, next year, the advancements there are going to come rapidly. And I think the thing to think about here is that the shift into this model gives you flexibility to take advantage of those advancements when they become available. So while, to Dr. Navarro's point, we may not know the right answer today for what we want to do with the data, pretty sure we don't want to get rid of it. And at the end of the day, we're going to have the opportunity to more efficiently tomorrow handle the data that we collected today. So.
Yeah, and I think I would just echo, we are very early in the journey, but I think, the cloud provides the flexibility that you don't need to buy all of that additional hardware up front, because we still don't know what the right answer might be. But once you're in the cloud, you have the flexibility then to move the storage around. And to Dr. Navarro's point, you're not going to throw that data away. And can you actually move it to a lower cost point for storage, a lower performance point for storage, but then still use it and expose it to high-level services like machine learning and artificial intelligence to derive net new insights? Again, we are early in that conversation, but the cloud provides that layer of flexibility, and the way that Sectra are implementing the solution, where it's more evergreen, customers will be able to take advantage of those solutions that much faster than rather than having to try and design them up front.
Well, on that note, we are 2 minutes to the top of the hour. I think we're going to have to cut off our Q&A. And I would like to say thank you from all of us for joining us today. We appreciate your time. We hope you enjoyed the webinar. We wish you all have a great Monday.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.